So our agenda for today, we've just done our welcome. We'll go through the learning objectives. We'll do introductions. Melissa's going to give a quick summary of the basics of prefab and manufactured construction. Then each of our presenters will do a case study. We'll take a quick bio break because we're going to be an hour in and then an hour after that. And then we'll do a panel with questions and answers. The learning objectives are here. Again, if and when you want to apply for AIA CEUs, go to the link in the chat, enter your information, and the BSA will take care of the rest. And so I'm going to let each of the presenters introduce themselves. If you guys are okay to do it in the order, so I'll let you start, Melissa.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lee. Hi, everyone. I am, as Lee said, covering for Nick Massey today. So for those of you who know him, I'm going to do my best to channel my inner Nick. I am the practice leader for our lean consulting practice at Haley and Aldrich. I have personally worked in this industry for about 25 years, and I found my home in lean about 15 years ago. So I am a sort of passionate advocate for the potential of lean to solve problems, engage people, and really continue to drive the transformation journey that we are on in this industry. Glad to be here.
Great. Ryan?
Hey everybody, I'm Ryan Hellinger. I'm an architect, healthcare designer, and a partner at NBBJ. I co-lead our global healthcare practice, and I'm connecting today from my home in Columbus, Ohio. Great to be here.
Hello, I'm Charlie Dunn. I'm with DPR Construction. Been at DPR 4 years now. I tongue-in-cheek call myself a project storyteller because within DPR we're a lean, flat organization, so don't use titles internally. A couple common threads in my career, lean has been one. Speaking English and giving respect to everyone on the project team has been another, and really gaining value from the person closest to doing the work. And I just let you guys know, I can't wait for us to get through the first hour so we get to the Q&A, because the conversations we had yesterday and prep were awesome. So,
great.
Hi, my name is Steve Swenson. I'm the president of Modular Design Plus. I'm actually in my my cabin up in Northwest Montana. I'm not in Texas. We have two facilities in the United States, one in Kansas City and a large 125,000 square foot fabrication shop down in the Fort Worth area. I'm glad to be here and looking forward to the Q&A. Thank you.
I'm going to ask again for everybody to please be sure to mute, because we've got some kind of feedback going on. Thank you.
Sure. Hey everybody, I'm Chris Burke. I'm with DIRTT. I've been with DIRTT for 15 years. I've been involved in modular construction for 15 years with DIRTT as a DIRTT partner, and now on the healthcare team. And my role at DIRTT is I manage all of our strategic accounts from healthcare throughout North America. So really to support our clients, our DIRTT reps, our distributors, and then all the professional services teams that help create and install these projects. Thank you.
Great.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Denton Wilson, Vice President of Planning, Design, and Construction, Atrium Health out of Charlotte. I look at everybody on this list as absolute partners because I've been blessed to work or am working with all of them. Spent the last 28 years in Dallas-Fort Worth, just being one of those fanatical, progressive owners that really wants to make a difference. Came out to Charlotte 3 years ago to really engage this region, really drive lean, prefabrication, holistic thinking, and I'm ready for a great conversation. So let's have fun.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all. There we go. Melissa, did I skip one? Melissa, we can't hear you.
Thank you. It's really not good when your moderator starts the conversation on mute. So thank you, Lee. I'm going to be very brief because these panelists have incredible stories to share, but we all agreed that having a little bit of vocabulary at the beginning might help. There are so many terms and it's easy to get lost in the language. So just a little bit of level setting is what I'm here for. Many of these maybe terms you all know, so we'll get through this really quickly. So next slide, please, Lee. There does appear there's a significant lag.
There is, it's big.
That's all right. So there's sort of a spectrum of prefabrication that you'll hear about today. We'll talk a little bit and you'll hear about some single trade assemblies. This is happening a lot already. It is happening on your projects, whether you're aware it is or not in most cases. Electrical, sheet metal, plumbing, these trades have been doing this for years and are seeking to do more. So this is electrical webs, in-wall rough, lighting assemblies, duct assemblies. This is happening off-site in people's prefabrication facilities, and it is sometimes happening on-site or in temporary spaces near sites where we're getting greater quality control, better flow. This photo happens to be a plumbing assembly from BNI, a mechanical contractor in Florida. So next along the spectrum is multi-trade assemblies. It is just as it sounds. Elements and components from multiple trades are present. I think the MEP industry is doing amazing work here already. So multi-trade can be volumetric. So it can be box-like, think bathroom pods. It's just that it's not structural in that case. Multi-trade can be panelized, which you will hear about today. I'm pretty sure this is a photo I took at Benson Wood up in New Hampshire. And multi-trade are things like risers, racks, skids. The photo on the right is a racking system from BNI. And then far to the right, we have volumetric modular. These are structural elements, houses, hotels, floor by floor, standalone hospital rooms. This is a photo that I took at Skender last year. So there's no hierarchy. One of these is not better than the other. It's a continuum, and it's simply about determining what is the right application for the situation. And the answer, as you'll hear in the stories today, is often multiple things are right. Next slide, Lee. So this last term that's out there, I think is a little bit more all-encompassing, and I think the lean evangelist in me really likes this term. I believe this was coined by Amy Marks. If not, she's made it heavily popular in the past year at Autodesk. So most simply, industrialized construction is about bringing the mindset and techniques of manufacturing to the built environment. So the fabrication continuum isn't so much the focus here. It's the goals that matter, streamlining design, streamlining our building processes, removing waste, confusion, improving flow, and most importantly, actually finding ways to deliver the value our customers seek better, and being more satisfied in our own work. There's nothing like a brutal process to just drag you down every day. So to really optimize this potential, there are a lot of enablers needed, and I think you'll hear so many of these in the presentations today. As we move along this shift and make this shift, there are behavioral enablers. The whole ecosystem of players need to change: owners, designers, CMs, trades, all the way through how we engage our supply chain. I think lean thinking is a critical element of enabling these behaviors. You'll hear about accountability and collaboration from Denton, trust, early decision making. There are technology enablers, so leveraging the immense and rapidly changing power of technology to make things easier and faster and better, and to allow the designers to work differently. And then process enablers. So you'll notice here I'm focusing on lean manufacturing, not so much construction. So really bringing in the concepts of flow and standardization and automation. I've also included, and I think you'll hear today about the concept of DFMA, design for manufacture and assembly. I think the simplest way to think about this is just design for ease of manufacture of parts, ease of assembly. I prefer the term DFX, because it should be ease of anything. It could be ease of install or even ease of disassembly in our age of flexibility and reuse. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our first presenter. I'm just going to remind those listening, please use the chat to send through your questions. We will be collecting them and pulling them into the panel discussion at the end. And we're going to get through each of these amazing presentations first before taking those questions. So Ryan, hopefully you have control.
Yep. How's that? Good. So I was going to give an overview of the way we thought about prefabrication at NBBJ. And essentially, it's going to be looking forward and back. First, we start off by looking back. We're going back 12 years to the first project we did in a multi-trade prefabrication mode. That was Miami Valley Hospital. Then we're going to move forward to the present. And then we're going to even think about where prefabrication is headed next, maybe 12 years in the future. I'm going to go through a lot of slides really quickly, but essentially, the big idea here is that we're not doing prefabrication for prefabrication's sake, but we just see with our healthcare clients this immense desire for standardization. And over time, the desire for standardization across healthcare systems and all of the value that that brings in terms of operations and brand and experience, that is extreme. What we're also seeing then parallel to that in construction is a desire for prefabrication and all the value that that brings to the way the industry works. So what we're doing is an overlay of those two curves, and we're looking for that sweet spot in the middle, and that's why we're interested in prefabrication, because it's the intersection of these two trends, two different industries that come together and bring value in terms of the way the building is constructed and the way it works in the future. So this started with Miami Valley Hospital. Building Design and Construction called this the first multi-trade prefabricated project in the United States. Those were basically an assembly of 180 acuity adaptable rooms. And with that, we had all identical rooms spread across multiple floors and identical wings. The idea at first was to think volumetrically about it, but then the real breakthrough was a kind of hybrid between volumetric and panelized that thought of the demising wall and that componentry as something that could be repeated 180 times. So that's exactly what we did. We thought about building these kind of pork chop components in a factory and loading 4 of them onto a truck. In terms of the way they were going to be delivered and even picked or elevated up, we ended up splitting them into 2 pieces, the toilet room module and the head wall footwall module. But essentially that was all built in rented warehouse space, a batch plant approach with the same CM that was working on site, working off site in this case. And then here's a picture of these were pretty primitive. Again, this was 12 years ago that these were built, but the first of the toilet room modules, it was loaded up into this space. What was really important to us was the craft and quality. It didn't feel like you were walking into a prefabricated space. And frankly, at the time, as we surveyed the landscape of providers who were doing prefabrication, we weren't seeing work that was at this level, which is why we did the batch plant approach. But that's certainly something that's changed for the better over time. And we're seeing great precision from dedicated prefabricators as well who are using an assembly line. Also for this project, we used the first in the country for MEP racks. So you see that arrayed across each of these wings. This was a very early bin model back when we were using Bentley actually, but thinking about all the systems that are in between the floor and the ceiling, and then how those could be rack based. In this case, it's an open core module, so it's a 16-foot wide center space that runs down the middle of each wing. That meant we could do 20 foot long by 8 foot modules for each of the racks. And those were built in the same rented warehouse space. You see all of that construction here. The metrics around that were pretty exciting in terms of the way it all came together: reduced labor cost, increased productivity, improved safety, reduced waste, build quality, much faster, and then improved long-term flexibility. And just to touch on a few of those metrics, on a conventional job site, a plumber's installation quota is at 200 feet per day. And the plumbers in this shop were doing 600 feet per day for that 300% productivity increase. Or another really important value that was brought to this was improved build quality. The inspectors were brought into that space and they could inspect all of the work 360 degrees and nothing, they weren't coming in and looking at things that were already hidden. And they really appreciated that. Plus things could be capped in the shop, which meant they were cleaner. And then lastly, in terms of adaptability and serviceability, we designed in, and we always continue to design into these racks, a no-fly zone. And that basically gives the owner the opportunity to get up into that ceiling, access things, or even load new systems into that rack, systems that haven't been invented yet, but are going to become important in the next 10, 20, 30 years. So we're really seeing then prefabrication, not just as a game changer in terms of delivering the building on day one, but providing a better flexible and adaptable environment over time, and then really working against premature obsolescence. And one last story on Miami Valley, because we had adopted this prefabrication mindset, totally different direction on this, not thinking about the rooms or the racks, but even the whole construction sequence. On that project, there were the two buildings that you see here in the middle that needed to be demolished in order to enable the new building to go up. Those two buildings had a patient bridge that went through them, and there was critical care stretcher traffic that was moving through that. So we had to build a temporary bridge before we could take those down. Unfortunately, the temporary bridge had to be quite robust, right? You were moving critical care patients through it. So it could not wobble, HVAC to the max. And it was pricing out at $2 million to stick build that. So we asked, well, now that we have a prefabrication mindset, is there a way to do that bridge in a prefabricated way? And so we had the idea of talking to a jetway manufacturer. So we talked to the FMC jetway company. They said they would be very interested and they would provide their product. And instead of it taking 6 months to build, they could use things they already had in hand, and it could be delivered much more rapidly to the site. So here you see the site. The two buildings that are being demolished are in the middle. This is December 12. Here's December 13. Here's December 14. Here's December 15. 3 days, all of that bridge work is delivered. And then the following week, they begin demolition on the building in the background. And interestingly then, you compare the metrics, $2 million as estimated to construct the temporary bridge. Conventionally, half that cost to do it with prefabrication. It would have taken 4 to 6 months to do it conventionally. They actually installed this in 3 days, and they were able to remove it overnight when the new permanent bridge was in place because of the new construction. Since Miami Valley in 2010, we've done a series of other projects, and you can see in this slide the way the scope has increased for each. And then one very exciting aspect of the scope increase in what we're calling Generation 3 is that we added renovation, which then minimizes disruption, because instead of shutting down a bed floor in order to do demolition and then build everything by hand inside, you can build everything before you even shut it down and really minimize the downtime for that floor. The next project we wanted to talk about, really Generation 4, was Atrium. And I know that other folks down the line are going to talk more about this project, but I did want to talk about how we kind of set the table for Atrium and talked about some of the interesting advances there. And with that, we really zoomed in on the opportunity with that head wall. And thinking about the prefabricated head wall that we've been doing on multiple projects in the past, we moved forward with this idea of a smart chassis. And if you peel away the cladding on that head wall, then what you're getting is a motherboard approach. And so that's showing something that works well for acuity adaptability. It can accommodate systems, again, just like the overhead racks that haven't even been invented yet. And it does it in a minimally disruptive way. So we've got a little bit of a build here that gets into like expansion bay 1 for additional power and data, expansion bay 2 for new med gases, expansion bay 3, what's down the line, an AI server, or new human interface control systems, or even expansion bay 5, which could be robotics that are built into the system. But we're thinking again about how to remove premature obsolescence and adapt for the future. And this prefabricated head wall is a great opportunity to do that. The beauty of a same-handed room is that one patient's head wall is the other patient's foot wall. So the same chassis that's supporting technology to do life support on one side is family support on the other. That's what we're showing here, with the screen that's built into that chassis, and then the opportunity to do network interface there, my health and learning, order meals, watch and relax. And essentially then what you get are two vectors of support that come out of that chassis in the center. You have physical support, life support for one patient when it's on the head wall face, and then emotional support for the patient and family when it's on the foot wall face. or essentially here, connection to nature up, connection to the care team down, emotional support on one side and physical support on the other, all spinning off of this prefabricated component in the center. We also move forward with this idea, and now this is actually thinking about the present, work that we've done for the Army Corps of Engineers. They began working with this idea of how to do surge beds on an arena field. And so we took their layout and asked, well, how could prefabrication, especially the footwall technology that we've been developing, be tied into that? And so you see here a series of units that then form the ring around the patient care space in the center. It's the same company that we're working with for the prefabrication of the head walls. And again, the idea that you could put these in a truck, move them to any hotspot in the country. And when we developed this in the spring, it was definitely focused on the Northeast. Now they're beginning to do a field hospital work in Wisconsin. So we'll actually see where this might go. And again, they could be reused or stockpiled, so everything can be sterilized if a pandemic materializes, and then actually be loaded into new construction once that takes place. And then the last thing we'll talk about is this in-car care unit. This is probably moving a few years into the future, but prefabrication also comes into play in that. And essentially we've said, with COVID, what are the next ways we can think about the safety and convenience of the car as a potential site for primary care? We thought originally about a drive-through approach, and then we've advanced that to what we're calling the service bay approach. It's parallel processing and better provider to patient interface through the car window. Here's a way that we have those.
Excuse me, we need one more person to mute. And now, Ryan, we've lost you.
Hey guys.
Okay, good, you're back. Great.
Yeah, but I do hear an echo. Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Good.
You guys don't hear the echo though?
I hear a little echo.
You do hear the echo, Ryan, yes.
Maybe someone else can try muting.
And I am paroling for muting others, so if I mute you, that's why.
Anyone else?
Ryan, do you still have your cell phone on?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, I can keep going. I'll just plow through the echo.
Melissa, I've lost my host capacity, but so I'll let you do the muting.
Okay. Are you good, Ryan? You want to keep going?
So we're not echoing, just Ryan's echoing. And now we don't hear him at all.
And now, Ryan, we don't hear you again. Much better. You're back to normal.
Beautiful.
Okay, great. Not sure what the glitch was, but let's keep going.
Great.
Okay, so I'll just wrap up by finishing this section on what car care might look like in the future, and again, the prefabrication option for that. So essentially here you see the idea of prefabricated bays, and a patient can just pull in and care is delivered then right through the side of the car. And the case carts or whatever you need can then be brought to that patient. We laid this all out on a 60-foot grid, and the idea is that it works on an existing parking lot or even within an existing parking deck. And essentially then you see those blades with all of the infrastructure built in right away that are loaded on the flatbed, and then a roofing system as well for when this is done on a surface lot or the top of a garage, potentially incorporating solar too for charging of a car inside or the equipment. So then we just wrap up with a couple of images of that. But a really quick overview then of where we've been and where we're going, and the mindset then is stitching all those things together. And we're really looking for healthcare specific opportunities and thinking, of course, about prefabrication, not just as a better way of building, but a way of making sure that the work is more enduring and adaptable for a very uncertain future in healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yes, thank you very much.
If you can give control back to Lee on Charlie, if you want to unmute yourself. Lee, have you lost the ability to share? Do I need to share? Okay.
I'm good, just
making sure.
it's just slow. It's a big file. All right, Charlie.
Okay, great. Thanks. So a little bit about DPR. We're a technical builder. We want to be experts. We want to be builders and not brokers. And we have 5 subsidiaries that are all involved in prefabrication and modular. SurePods you'll hear a little bit about, which is volumetric. Digital building components, so true digital with robotic process automation. Robotic welding, EIG for electrical modules, OES for prefab, and equipment assist for prefab as a rental fleet. And then view ops, where we really are working hard to understand the building lifecycle and be able to feed back both design and construction data from lifecycle data. So we stop this cycle of continuing to make the same mistakes in industries. So the next slide, please. I come to this guy often, and to answer the question, why would I say we want prefab as a GC, I would come to one word: productivity. And to me, and I'll get to this in a couple of these levers that I'll discuss, productivity encompasses more than just value of work in place. As we understand it better, particularly learning from manufacturing, it encompasses information flow, safety, quality, and a host of other variables. So to me, I sum up that prefab gives us an opportunity to solve this productivity dilemma we find ourselves in as an industry. So Archimedes made this statement: give me a place to stand and I shall move the world. So we go to the next slide, and I'll couch my conversation here briefly in 3 different levers. So the first lever is this: change the presumption. As we pursued this work for Atrium, we built upon some things other teams had done, and you see this A3 and the call out at the bottom. Everything is prefabricated until it is proven otherwise. So rather than proving we should prefabricate, now we've shifted the presumption to prove that we should not prefabricate. Go to the next slide and look at lever number 2. And this is why I think we need to change this presumption. We're still learning what is a mature model for prefab value. How do we define and measure all of these benefits? This I've borrowed from Bryden Wood. We're working on our own version of this. It involves multi-criteria decision-making, which, as we know, we struggle with as a people. And then also what we value today may not be the long-term value. We're just at the early stages of this in general construction. EPC world has been a little bit farther out ahead of us. So next slide. And now we get into the levers I get more tangibly excited about with this project. Lever 3.1, prototype our solutions. And understanding that prototyping will require at least 5 to 7 rounds to get an optimal solution. And here specifically, as we worked with NBBJ, I'm not going to steal Denton's thunder, as we worked in a phenomenal team building opportunity before being awarded, we learned a couple of things I wanted to share that I think would be benefit to architects and designers. We learned the importance of spatial fidelity and the importance of autonomy on the part of the individual where you're requesting feedback. So you can go to the next slide and I'll talk about how we leverage the value of this insight. So simply what we're showing here is a blue line, and this is the cost of making mistakes. To be transparent, we all make them: architects, designers, builders. And then we need quality feedback. So I want to keep an eye on what is my cost of making mistakes and what is the quality of feedback as I share out these prototypes. So I can model very low cost, but my quality of feedback is not great in a model. And I'm sure all experience this. The end user sees it and says, that's not what we thought we were getting. It's been in the model all along. Then we go to VR and AR. Here, there's a little bit higher cost, but not bad. And there's a little bit better quality. Spatial, I'm going to come back to. We go to functional. That's where we build it in the field. Perhaps not connected and powered, but it's functionally accurate. There, our cost goes way up. We've mobilized, we've got space, we've got materials we've built. And of course, our feedback goes up. And then first in place, here we have the highest cost of mistakes, because often now everything's ordered. It may be fabricated, it may be on trucks, it may be in a yard waiting for us. So to go back and change is extremely expensive, and we do get better quality confirmation. But what we learned is if we can create a spatially accurate environment and overlay with the digital opportunity, either from AR using an iPad or AR using Microsoft HoloLens, now we get high quality feedback similar to the more costly options, but we've invested much less and we can prototype much faster. So taking advantage of this gap has really allowed us to drive up the value proposition for doing this prototyping. And now we'll move to next type of prototyping. So as a builder, this is what I want to do. You can go ahead and hit play and let this, yes, prefab provides tremendous opportunities for us to accelerate schedule, for us to de-risk the job site, for us to pull labor hours out of the job site. However, it also creates construction challenges we haven't faced before. Here you're observing how we first need to bring in the glass, and we're going through multiple prototypes of this, how we're going to load a typical floor. Then we have to bring in overhead walls and stacks. Then we're bringing in MEP racks. And the reason we have to do this in this sequence is we didn't have the floor space. If we brought in the pods ahead of this, we'd be blocked from doing the MEP racks. So we have to play with building this and make mistakes and realize we can't do that first, or we're not gonna be able to move this around. And here the digital technology, the opportunity to, one of the ways I describe this lever is to do a digital Gemba to go see the work, but we do it using a virtual time machine because the work doesn't exist yet. So we hop in our virtual time machine, we go and see the work, we understand we have mistakes in our plans, and then we create this ability to sequence this, communicate it, procure it, supply the job site, and have the most effective flow for production on the job site. And as this finishes out, I mentioned productivity being multidimensional. One that we're very excited about as we lean into it more, and we did a prefab lab in our warehouse and we began to understand this, is that now for the first time we have an opportunity to change the safety for the individual worker in construction, so that rather than bringing the worker to the work and forcing the body to adapt to the work environment, we're able to adapt the work to the worker. So eliminating the likelihood of, you can advance to the next slide, of long-term accidents. You have to click one more time. There we go. Perfect. And these long-term accidents are very real. Shoulder, hip, back, knee. And understanding that a key part of productivity is an experienced workforce, protecting that worker over the course of their career becomes very important. And as you study the data, there's an alarmingly high rate of exits early from the construction industry due to these long accidents. We see prefab as being a tremendous opportunity to reduce that. And here's just some final thoughts on using the right lever. Every time I talk about levers, I have to show this. I was on a farm in Lincoln, North Carolina. You don't see it. There were 8 adults, 6 children, all either in a pickup truck bed or next to a truck. A bull decided to charge at me. I didn't grow up a cowboy. I didn't grow up on a ranch. When that bull came at me and I took its horn, I understood the meaning of this phrase, take the bull by the horns. This is a lever to move a massive beast coming at you. And as technical builders, we understand hospitals can be this massive beast, with tremendous opportunity or risk for things to go wrong. And there's one other point, now Denton, I'm setting you up, that as I went back and saw this, you see that hand in the picture to the right with a piece of bread? That's my 8-year-old daughter, Lucy. And as a parent, I say I always worked hard to keep the twinkle in her eye. Denton has his version of this that he calls CFM. I won't steal his thunder there. So as everyone else is yelling at me, Charlie, Charlie, get in the truck, my daughter, Lucy, keeps her head. She's yelling, tsui, 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 at the bull. And as I pivot and turn, she throws that piece of bread in front of the bull's nose. And I'll leave you with that in these complex projects, another opportunity we have with these better approaches is that we can create calm and we can focus on the real problems as opposed to just losing our head and yelling the obvious. So again, like I said, I'm very grateful to be here and look forward to this conversation with these guys that are really advancing the industry.
Thank you, Charlie. Keith, you are up next.
All right, I'm going to go through not as fancy as Charlie's presentation, but I'm going to do a little modular 101 here. So you can go down 2 slides to the next one. Yeah. So a lot of the builders, architects, designers, engineers, when you start talking about modular, they want to get up and leave the table. And that's because if you look at the bottom picture, the industry has been building modular boxes for 50 years and it hasn't changed too much up until the last 5 to 10 years. But we've made some significant inroads into trying to get more of the construction dollar out there. And as Charlie just talked about, the looking at what can't you prefabricate and setting that aside and then working on what you can and taking it forward. So we think there's a really a lot of growth potential in prefabrication and modular. Some of the segments are already doing it, like the MEP, but you can take that same box that's on the bottom picture and you can dress it up a little bit, put a little bit better quality into it. The bottom box is meant to be relocated and used several times, so it's a baseline product. Top product is more permanent and wouldn't be deconstructed. So you can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, we have a new facility down in Texas. This is a rendering for a hotel that we're putting in Waco. We're building the top 5 stories for that 8-story building. And these modules come fully finished inside, and they stack. They form the superstructure of the building, and you can just see some of the examples down there. But this is something that is really started to take hold of the construction market, especially in the hospitality business. We're working on a couple projects right now in the healthcare side of things. One is stackable volumetric modular, such as these, for a recuperative care center campus in LA, and another campus for LA County that is the small format pod style. I call them small format non-structural. So you can go to the next slide. So this is an example of what's been talked about earlier before, where you take a look at everything in the building. What can you prefabricate and assemble in larger pieces, get it to site? You take the stress of the labor requirements off the site, put it in the factory where you get a lot more productivity. I get 8 hours of productivity in an 8.5-hour day. We're on site, I think some of the general contractors would argue that they might get 4 to 6 hours of true productivity in a traditional build site. So you take a look at the exterior skin, how much of that can be panelized and shipped to site, the exterior walls, the interior rooms, whether you go with small format non-structural or volumetric structural stackable product. There's all kinds of considerations that have to be made. So you can go to the next slide. So this is a project that we finished about 2 years ago for Advocate Healthcare. It's got 90 of the small format non-structural bathroom pods that were placed in there. We actually cut 6 months out of a 3-year project by putting the bathroom pods and another 100 exam rooms in that building. We did 5 different campuses, and the customer actually stated at the end of each project whether or not we met the compression schedule or schedule compression or not. And in most cases, we cut about 20 to 25% off of the schedule time. And when they figured the revenue generation in and the cost of the building, the early recognition of revenue, every one of the projects had a significant savings in total cost over the period of the traditional construction. So this is a study that Modular Building Institute did just last year. They did several different projects, and they come up with about the same kind of statistic. You save about 20-25% if you use over 50%. Here they use, in this particular project, it was 82% prefabricated modular construction. So quite a significant compression on the schedule and early revenue delivery. Go to the next slide. So you've seen some pictures like this before. We go into virtual design, top right-hand corner. We fabricate the frames and put the shear bracing and lateral bracing and that mostly for shipping. And then we finish the unit. And so you see in the lower left, that's the actual unit that was delivered to the customer's project and as it's installed. Same thing for the next slide. This is an exam room. This is one of the Advocate exam rooms that we did. We've done over 500 of them in the last couple of years for just this one customer. And we go through virtual design and add in all of the MEP and the finishes. And you go to the next slide. The finished product is delivered. The rooms were actually, these were floorless, but everything you see except the chairs and the rolling stock was on the inside the module when it was delivered. So they finished the floor, turned the lights on, and away you go. Next slide. Closer to the healthcare industry, currently we're just started fabricating about 10,000 square foot of various rooms, bedrooms, bathroom, shower, residential care modules. We're delivering 76 rooms from Kansas City facility all the way to LA County in January, February of next year. and we just started construction on that. But what was unique about this project is that the customer wanted modular, and they're doing 5 campuses in the LA area. And one is volumetric stackable modular. It's a smaller campus. This one here is the small format non-structural cassette style or pod style. We're doing the 4 3-story buildings, roughly 10,000 square feet, and the RCC building in the back in the upper left there. We box massed that, and we couldn't find the value and the efficiencies in that because of the different room sizes and the lack of repetition and standardization. So both the customer and the general contractor and us, we decided to go away from that building and just focus on the RTP building. So we'll have more about that next year. Maybe I can come back and tell you and have some pictures and show you how that went. But the customer and the GC were very pro modular, and that really helps. And it's been alluded to, if you get started early in the schematic stage of things, where this wasn't drawn modular in the beginning, it was drawn about two to 3 years ago. We got it, we took it, we resized the rooms, we gave the customer what they wanted, but we found some efficiencies in standardization and repetition, and we rearranged some things. And it's more of a custom project, because typically we would do interior rooms. They're all the same, exactly the same, 75 bathrooms or 75 exam rooms. And so you have one drawing basically and all the rooms are the same. Here we have probably 30 different room styles and variations on that room. We're installing to the exterior of the building. So a lot of different things we had to overcome, but we took the project and we said, we're going to find out why can't we do prefabrication, and it ended up that the customer liked what we did, and we're moving ahead with a pretty comprehensive, complex project. Next slide. So that's just the campus. We're doing the 4 RTP buildings on the right-hand side, the RCC. So you can see it's fairly tight as well. So getting rooms into the buildings as they're built over the course of a 3-month period is challenging, to say the least. And then shipping it 1,500 miles across the country in the winter is another challenge that we're going to be faced with, but we think we're going to overcome all of that and deliver the project on time. Next slide. So when I talk about box massing, we take this is how we look at the project. These rooms weren't necessarily where they are or the same size when we got this, but we rearranged it, found some consistency, found some repetition where we could, and ended up coming up with 76 rooms that we would deliver in the 4 3-story buildings that we have. Next slide. We did the same thing to the RCC, and you can see the rooms are a lot longer. Some of them are much heavier, and there wasn't enough of them to where we could change the value proposition to the customer. There wasn't enough efficiency for us to put them on the floor, and we still had some challenges in shipping and that, so we decided to pull that volumetric, or the small format modular component out of that building, and they're finishing it on a traditional basis. But the customer is very happy with what they're getting, and they can say they've got modular contribution to the project. And I think the last slide. So you can see that the customer wanted it not to be in an institutional environment, just a little bit about living-centered design. These rehabilitation campuses are for people that are coming out of incarceration back into society, trying to be productive citizens and individuals. They're coming off of rehab programs. They're coming out off the street for whatever reason, and they didn't want the institutional feel. They wanted more of a campus style, dormitory style, and a care facility that's very open, and that's what they're getting, and that's all I have today. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Well done. And Chris, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you.
All right.
So my name's Chris. You can go through this slide. We sort of did some introductions already. You can go through that slide as well. So DIRTT is the leader in North America for interior multi-trade construction that's non-residential. We've been in business. We've specialized in healthcare for about 15 years, and sorry something stuck in my throat. Can we go to the next slide, please? I'm sorry about that. We have 4 plants in the US. Our plants are in Calgary, Phoenix, Savannah, and the 4th one in Charlotte is set to open up shortly the first quarter of next year. And the reason that we have these 4 plants located throughout the US is so we can get our manufacturing located near where the distribution will be, and that's to create a more sustainable approach to manufacturing and also to bring redundancy into our method. So if one plant has to go down for some reason, COVID or something like that, we can easily ship the manufacturing to one of the other plants, continue to stay on schedule and meet all our requirements. Next slide, please. So DIRTT's completed over 3,000 projects for 1,500 unique healthcare organizations. So we're really not looking at asking people to go out on a limb and be the first anymore, right? We're not looking for early adopters. This is a proven methodology to be able to deliver healthcare construction that meets the needs of healthcare owners. Can you move to the next slide, please? And before I get into sort of a case study or show you how we deliver a project, I just wanted to step back a little bit and address some of the discussions that we have when we're traveling around talking to healthcare systems. And the first thing really is, what are the change drivers or what are the challenges that they're facing? We all know that the demographics are a big challenge, right? We have an aging population, as well as a rise of millennial head of households, and they're making decisions on how healthcare will be delivered. And those demographics are starting to change delivery care models, right? We're seeing a move more to outpatient spaces, ambulatory care centers, programmatic centers, and then the hospitals themselves are starting to treat patients who are a little bit sicker, and that's creating the need to modernize or build new hospitals. And when these new buildings are created, they're designed to last a long time. They're going to last 50 years, 70 years, 100 years. But the components inside of those buildings, technology, equipment, even delivery care models, they're going to change, and they're going to require renovation to the existing space. And how do we build a building that can meet requirements now, but still be positioned to meet requirements in the future? What we've learned through COVID in the last few months is we really can't afford to build buildings that are going to meet a single programmatic requirement. They have to be able to be flexible to meet unforeseen needs. The other challenge that health systems have is patient choice. Patients can choose to take their discretionary dollars and go anywhere they want. And so they're competing against each other. And all of those drive uncertainties. And we like to, how can you design and build for an unknown future? And go to the next slide, please. So what a health system is looking for from their trade partner is really a couple of core things. And prefab can solve a lot of those things. Speed to market, cost control, flexibility. I'm going to dive into a little bit more to kind of set the table for that. Safety, less workers on site is a safer site. And then sustainability, and not just from a materials perspective, but from a behavioral perspective. How is the building going to function over time, and what is the impact on sustainability based on those attributes? We can go to the next slide, please. So then we look at, what does DIRTT deliver back to a health system based on those 2 previous slides we just looked at? So we can provide a standardized solution, and that standardized solution is scalable. So it doesn't have to necessarily be the same component built to the same module. You're standardizing on a building process of using this version of the prefab, this multi-trade version. So it's a standardized solution that can scale anywhere from a 1,500 square foot urgent care all the way up to a new hospital that's hundreds of thousands of square feet. And the flexibility I'm talking about here is really the flexibility in program, not the flexibility of being able to make changes on the fly. So because we're designed parametrically and all of our components go together, we can create flexibility in units. Maybe the wall assembly is the same size, but the components inside may vary, so that you may have the same wall system in an office and an exam room and in a head wall, but it just has different stuff inside it. All can be removed from one and put into the other. And then once we've created the solutions programmatically, it's a structured approach that can be repeated project after project after project. And that's where you start to see impact and value from using the same trade partners and the same professional service teams. Next slide, please. And this is the way that the DIRTT's set up to do it. So we've looked at some pods and some volumetric solutions. DIRTT's really multi-trade manufactured construction. for interior construction. And at the heart of it, we're looking at these UL listed assemblies. That's the framing component with UL listed factory installed components. So that's your modular electric, low voltage, power, network. You can see there's, in this case, there's modular gases inside the wall system. So all of those components, whether they're factory installed or a rough and installed for a site component, are done at the factory. So we're owning all of the distribution within the wall system themselves. So you have your framing level, which is designed parametrically, any height, any width, any depth. And then you have all of those prefab utility components installed in the factory. And the way that they attach to the system allows them to be repositioned in the field if they need to go into another location, or you can add additional components after installation throughout the life cycle of the product. The access is through the tiles. The finished tiles snap into place on the frame. So what that means, is you have that acuity adaptability, that expansion built in to a plug and play system, so you can easily get in there to make moves as changes. Once the finishes are put in place, there's then infection control gaskets that get installed, and millwork is hung on the assembly. So it's really looking at a lot of the discussions we've had up to this point, but giving you a more flexible way to access them in the future. Can we go to the next slide? So where's DIRTT applicable, right? Really, almost anywhere that we build in the US using FTI guidelines, we can create solutions in hospitals and outpatient spaces, in laboratory spaces. The areas we really want to avoid would be a fire rated application. We can do a non-rated smoke partition, some ORs, well, all ORs really, and in some shielded spaces. And we're going to scroll through a really quick slide next that just kind of shows you examples of what those spaces could look like. So here you can see a hospital, head walls, foot walls, corridor walls, emergency departments, ambulatory surgery centers, infusion spaces, lots of different primary care pictures coming up that we're rolling through right now, simulation labs, retail health, labs, behavioral health spaces in some areas, the educational spaces attached to a hospital. We're doing a lot with testing booths right now. And we've even moved into partnering up with contractors to create a volumetric hybrid. So the images you're seeing here, this is from a 70-bed hospital that we're building right now, almost completed, partnered up with the general contractor. So they're building the volumetric pods in their facility. We're building the DIRTT components in ours. We ship the DIRTT to the pod. They're installed inside the pod. They ship as units and are dropped into place. So we're starting to get a lot of that speed to market that you get with a volumetric pod, but preserve that flexibility, sustainability, and benefit back to the owner by having DIRTT installed inside of them. So when you think about where you can use multi-trade construction, it's really in any type of structure, right? Whether it's a conventionally built structure or a volumetric module or something like that. So it's starting to look at how can we best integrate different types of prefab with each other to get a solution back to the owner that works. Can you go to the next slide, please? And so I want to show you an example of DIRTT, and this is about, you can go to the next slide. This is a 12,000 square foot orthopedic project that you're seeing here. The key thing that Keith said earlier, one of the things I think I agree with him, is that 50% or greater scope of work to start to make the project be successful. With DIRTT, when you're looking at the material costs, they're probably a little bit higher than a conventionally built GIF wall, drywall wall. But we make up for that by the savings across all these other trades, and then the schedule savings as well. So we have to have that majority of the project using this version of prefab to be able to be cost effective, because we're going to start to look at savings per trade and savings per schedule to get to an overall project cost neutrality. So this project is 12,000 square feet. It was a 6-month schedule overall. Of that, 16 weeks were in permitting, demolition, and construction. The previous time was in the design and planning. And you can see the program in the upper right-hand corner. You can go to the next slide, please. And when you start to look at the impact here, that the key thing, I think, that for any prefab project is engaging the team early, which is the case here. We were involved in preliminary design prior to moving into SD, and having an engaged owner. So if you have an engaged owner and that owner really wants to have prefab used on their project, and typically that's going to involve the facilities team, the finance team, and probably the clinical team making decisions, we can get in early. We can work with the design and engineering teams. We can work with the construction teams, talk about scope of work and how it all goes together. And that starts to drive those efficiencies. And you can see kind of in the over on the right-hand side, our time on site in this whole project was about 5 weeks, right near the end of the schedule. And I'm going to walk you through that sequencing right now. If you can move ahead one slide. So the first thing about DIRTT and the way that we provide efficiencies on a project is you can see in image 1 here. That's a wide open space. So it optimizes the project for prefab from other trades as well. So like Brian was talking about earlier, you can have your overhead, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all of those components that are up in the plenum, they can be prefabbed offsite by the appropriate trade, brought in and installed in a wide open space. So it's reducing the amount of site work, it's reducing time on racks or baked scaffolding or lifts or whatever your jurisdiction allows. And you can see the plumbing is pre-installed there as well. So all of that work is done ahead of time, and that's that multi-trade impact on other trades. Slide 2, the ceiling's going in, same thing. I'm sorry, can you go back? Position 2 on this slide. The ceiling is being installed in one continuous plane. The highlighted area in the upper middle, that's our modular zone box. So those are 16 circuits in one zone box. We grid them out every 400 or 500 square feet. That's shipped to the electrical sub. They pre-wired in their shop and they bring it out and install it ahead of time. So we're getting all of that work done in that free and clear space. Flooring, you can see that's going down in a wide open space as well. So it's reducing some cuts. It's reducing amount of co-base and labor there. And then in slide 5, picture 5, you can see the DIRTT walls have now come in. They're stood up into place. Our plumbing chase is wrapping around that plumbing stub. The plug and play components in the DIRTT wall are connecting into the components up in the ceiling. I neglected to talk about 4 down at the bottom. So 4 is when we're fabricating the DIRTT assemblies in positions 1, 2, and 3, so early in the process, and then we're bringing them out and connecting them into the building. And then 6 is actually your friendly neighborhood building inspector coming by, doing your rough-in inspections and saying, hey, this looks great, let's close it all up, which is what we're gonna see on the next slide if you can advance. So once rough-ins are done, the finishes snap into place. There's a hanging and a locking clip. So they're snapping in, but again, remember they're removable to get to all of those components that are installed. Finishes go in. Our millwork is designed to work with the rest of the DIRTT system. So we've already built the DIRTT frames. The blocking is installed in them already. The millwork has brackets to allow the millwork to simply kind of clip into the frames. And then we're gonna go ahead and hang the door. So it's really coming together quickly once that rough-in inspection happens. We can go to the next slide. And then there's your completed space that's turned over to the owner. So next slide, please. So what we're really seeing with multi-trade is we're taking part of the work from lots of different trades. We're doing it offsite at the factory. That allows us to reduce material and labor costs per trade. And the schedule acceleration, which is typically around a 20% or so schedule acceleration, is reducing the general conditions, project management, all of those schedule-related costs. Can you go to the next slide, please? And this is really the way we start to think about estimating. So if you just look at a material cost, right, DIRTT versus drywall and paint, which is kind of typically the way we see a lot of contractors or estimators doing that comparison, it's a premium. When you start to look at the scenario I just showed you, where we look at not just what's the work that DIRTT's replacing, but what's the work that we're making more efficient in those other trades, that's when we start to get to cost neutral. And then when we look at life cycle savings, the ability to get inside those assemblies and do your moves as changes, keep up with technology changes. I mean, every smart device that comes out has to get connected back to an IP address. You've got a leaking valve, whatever you may need to get inside and do. We've done studies with health systems, and we've been able to document significant life cycle savings based on that accessibility. It's sort of a design for disassembly approach. And then the last savings piece is when you standardize on this and roll it out across multiple facilities, you start to see that couple percent increase that you're getting from continuous improvement. And that's by eliminating some repetitive design and using the same trade partners on a consistent basis. Next slide, please.
Chris, I'm just going to give you like the 2-minute warning.
Oh, I'm at it. We have like 2 slides left. So you can scroll through these slides. These are really just showing the ability to get inside the walls and do those repairs. You can see here they're fixing that. The ability to move gases. We talked about the impact on life cycle costs, so we can move to the following slide from here. This is what I wanted to follow up and end on, and there's just 3 slides here. First thing is the adoption barriers to using not just DIRTT prefab, but any prefab are people. And I think we can probably talk about some of these details in the discussion. Next slide, please. The next thing is really the considerations we have, and that's getting that involved owner and building a team that knows how to deliver a prefab project. And then the following slide. And these are sort of the steps in early engagement. So we'll definitely be talking about things like this, I think, in the discussion, but it's that early engagement to define the scope, talk about who does what, create trade details of conventional and prefab, to talk about that handoff between the two, understand the BIM plan, and then create a set of drawings and narratives that really define who's doing what that goes out for pricing to the subcontractors, and then reviewing and aligning the budget. And the last slide is coming up right now. So in summary, when you look at DIRTT, it's a proven construction method, our version of prefab. It's cost neutral back to the owner initially, and it provides that future flexibility and life cycle savings impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That was fantastic. And last but not least, Denton.
Let's go. That's a whole bunch of goodness and betterment in our industry. So we should be very proud about what's happening. So it really starts for me. Passionate man, wants to raise the bar. Let's make the process better, but let's do it holistically. And so the AIA came out with this in 2007, which is the aspect of technology and the evolution and the combined of what owners are really wanting, which is a better, faster, less costly, less adversarial process. We've been stuck in our own way for a very long time. It's not a bad thing. We always have to cherish the past, but there are much better ways to do things now. But however, 13 years ago, when we fully started implementing technology and the catalyst of change, such as BIM, we really found that we were actually digging bigger holes and making progress going forward, because the fundamental factor of everything you've heard today really is on the basis of understanding a holistic learning environment, making sure you understand everybody knows what each other does for a living, because if you don't know what you're doing for each other, you can't hold each other accountable. The industry started using buzzwords like collaboration and trust, and basically started talking about prefabrication and lean, and it's talked about it in real siloed processes. I don't mind that. That's the first step of the growth, but boy, we have matured a lot since then. Collaboration equals accountability from an owner's perspective. And accountability equals measures of accountability. Show me your measures, and I'll show you a team that understands the progression of moving the needle. I've been known as far as to do these things that are called RFCs, which is a request for collaboration, because I really want to build the environment that allows a team to holistically understand what each other does for a living, and really dive in and understand the impact of everything that we do from a master builder mindset. Master builders really used to understand every line that drew had a reason, had a purpose, had an impact, impacted schedule, impacted costs, and impacted the community. We live in healthcare. My job is to take care of the community. My job is not to build buildings anymore. My job is to build environments to allow each of you to surpass your own expectations. It's very simply that way. So when we do an RFC, it's the process of getting down to the final 2 GC selections and putting my architectural partners, my design partners, my major trades, everybody in a room together for 3 weeks, as much or as little time as you want to spend together, to work out 5 CBAs, so I can watch how you think, how you make decisions, how you progress thought processes, and you can learn more in 3 weeks about a project than you could have ever learned in the 6 months of just sort of working together. And once you get a team that really understands that they really care about each other, they're not looking over each other's shoulder to push work out hurriedly, they're really slowing down to speed up, to really find synergy and what is bringing value, then you can actually start creating the measures that we must have. Prefabrication is validated based on critical path. If we're really looking at prefabrication as being the low-hanging fruit, mechanical hangers, plumbing risers, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but that is not what Denton's asking for. Charlie, tee up your microphone, brother.
Yep.
Tell this group what Denton's asking for.
So those of you in Boston, you guys celebrate, the heritage of the Boston Tea Party. Down here in Charlotte, we have Kings Mountain, where the Over Mountain men started up in Sycamore Shoals, Tennessee, and came and got us first in freedom and went on to be first in flight. But Denton came and talked to us, and I knew what Denton was laying down. But some of our guys in the room weren't really. They were just going to go traditional. And what I said, guys, this is not. Denton's not here saying let's go hike to the top of Kings Mountain. It's a good hike, good view. Denton's saying we need to get to the moon. We need to figure out how to really work together, trust each other, engage, and solve these hard problems, and deliver, modular, panelized in the way we haven't before.
So I really loved doing this back in Texas, and I was really known as an owner to go to the subcontractor's office. I remember the day I went to a drywaller's office who their lead foreman says that they were not going to engage in doing prefabrication and bathroom pods. And I asked that young man if he'd give me the opportunity to sit in front of all his superintendents. And I went to their office and showed them that the owner was going to pay for whatever it took them to do it, give me a shot. And we figured out in a bathroom pod that it typically took 24 hours to put drywall and tile in a bathroom pod. And that team was able to get it down to 6 hours, and they won't do it any other way. They just need to understand that the risk is okay. We can make mistakes, and the only way we're going to get better is by making mistakes. So we're doing these opportunities to get away from prototyping. When I came to Charlotte, it was an absolutely new opportunity, a new region, a hospital system who was doing tremendous work, lots of work, big system. But I did an 11-month valuation from a consultant to come out here to find out what the market was like, what the Atrium's contracts were like, what the environment was, how each other worked together, what job descriptions were. And really and truly, it came down to one fundamental question after 11 months. Was the hospital system holding up the industry, or was the industry holding up the hospital system? As an owner, my job is to create a platform that allows you guys to have an environment to engage and surpass your own expectations. And that is my passion in life. That means that stuff like talking about lean, which we all talk about lean, but we're not talking about lean tools. We're talking about a lean mindset, because that mindset is continual learning and the ability to ask the 5 whys to really open up and really talk about what is going to change to raise the bar. Yes, for years, prefabrication has not been an at equal value system. It's actually cost more to do it because we weren't doing it in sync. We were doing it out of sync. When we talk about flow now on a project, we no longer talk about the construction flow. We talk about the project flow. The RFC process allows the team to really understand the project, the mindset, the matrix of decision making, because I started doing prefabrication out at Charlotte, not for prefabrication's sake. I decided to push hard on prefabrication as soon as I got out here, because I had heard that the hospital system had a really hard time making decisions. And if I could use prefabrication as a way to drive decision making based on a matrix of authority, so we got better information to the field and reduced waste, then it was worth its effort. Then we started, I met Ryan well before we engaged MBBJ on a $1 billion project. We got over $2 billion of work in progress right now, so we're hitting it hard. And Ryan sat in my office as an incredible gifted designer and talked to me for an hour about prefabrication. And I'm like, I want to spend time with this man, because when we get to the point where we're actually starting to think about the innovation of how much power we can have through our design process to control and manage and make betterment through the construction process, then we're looking at the projects holistically. So it's fantastic. It's also now getting to the point that it's so real and it's so powerful that when you look at $2 billion worth of projects, we're going to be doing 60% of them prefabbed off-site, which reduces waste, creates quality, better safety. Our mechanical rack systems, we just finished up for an 8-story bed tower. All the mechanical racks are totally finished, sitting in a warehouse, and we saved 38% on labor by doing those in the warehouse, and they're ready to go. All the masonry brick panels for that bed tower are sitting on trucks in Atlanta right now with Z-clips waiting to come and be slapped on the side of the building, because we found a way to make it based on the critical path. All the decisions that we're making are made on A3s and CBAs, so we can validate the impact to everybody on the team, not just based on a silo, but based on how something really impacts everybody on the team. And we make every decision based off that tool. It's fantastic tracking of process. We also
just a second.
Yeah.
I think Lee, go ahead and advance. We've got an A3 there. So this is the RFC, but here when Denton's speaking of the A3 work.
Yeah, thank you very much. Because an A3, if you're not using A3s, I just beg and plead of you to get into the process of using these. I'm not sure how many people of the 58 people in the call use an A3, but they are the driving force behind holistic thinking. They talk with a current state, what a future state, and those two questions are presented to the entire team. The entire team gets an opportunity to voice the impact upon them, which gives the entire team to learn what each other does and the impact of each other. And then it gives us a cost impact, a schedule impact. And by gosh, it gives me the number one thing that this owner wants, which is a holistic recommendation from the team on what they believe is the right thing to do. And then it gives us what is the next step. And when you're working for a hospital system that goes through project after project after project, why reinvent the wheel on each one of these? All these are sitting in a historical norm. You go and you say, I want to understand concrete versus steel. You go look up the A3, you update it to current state, and away you go. So we went from having 900 pages of standards at Atrium, which if we understand the difference between design assist and design and told, 900 pages of standards is design told. And we took it down to 90 pages of guidelines so we can actually engage the folks that we hire and trust them to be the thought leaders to make that a living, breathing document so each project gets better as we go. The room standard, we brought 5 architects in, 5, to come up with an Atrium standard room, multi-acuity, multi-adaptable, the room that Ryan showed you, which if we had it today, we would not be fighting the surge need that we have because we would have all the flexibility. I saw a question come up through the chat on what about flexibility. The flexibility that we're putting in the backbone, the infrastructure, the room types, the knuckle for our nurses stations, it's fantastically futuristic looking and how to go forward. So everything that Ryan was showing on our head wall standards, our bathroom standards, we have core team, steering team, and clinical core team, and then Atrium image team that have walked through all of our mock-ups, have totally approved everything. The decisions are made for the next 6 years of progression of 700 patient rooms. And the only thing we've all committed to is this is the baseline. We're going to continue to make it better. That brick wall on the right-hand side, that is a prefab wall element sitting down in Atlanta right now for every one of that 8-story building to come up with those modules as you see it there on Z-clips and put it on the face of the wall. So the sky is the limit. It is a phenomenal, fun, innovative, passionate teams that are working in big room environments that everybody has a voice, the walls of accountability that talk about the critical path, the difference it's going to make, and when decisions have to be made, people know why. So prefabrication is driving the accountability and the innovation that as an owner, we're just starving for. So I couldn't be prouder of what the team's doing. Charlie, what you do on the next slide for them? We'll see what it is.
The next one takes them to their warehouse. So this is where.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's all the mechanical racks sitting right there that we saved 38% labor on for an 8-story bed tower that are just sitting there waiting to go. I mean, let's do it this way. So on a budget tracking log from an owner, when the team comes to me with, this is a change coming forth, what would you think about it? And it's $50,000. I don't want to know it's $50,000. I want to know what it does to the critical path, what it does to my schedule, because I'm not evaluating on cost. I'm evaluating on the whole impact of the use of those funds. A typical 50-bed hospital is typically in a revenue stream of somewhere around $100,000 a day. You're going to save me a month and time to spend $50,000. I know what I'm going to make a decision on. So prefab really has to be predicated based on a holistic thinking about what the impact of the decision is. And that is a wonderful leg up and maturity of how people are starting to think about how prefab really, really works. We also learned a lot about how to engage our users to feel like they really have the impact of decision making. So MBBJ has really been a thought leader on how we do fish bones and P3s, and we engage all the folks. And what that has done in the innovation of trying to engage holistic thinking, we've now brought our clinicians in much early in the process to think about what they need based on their current environment. And now what we're finding is they're changing their current environment to be better prepared. So when they move to their new environment, they're already ready to use it, which is just an incredible win all by itself. So unbelievable maturity of where it's going. There's my, collaboration equals accountability, accountability equals measures of accountability. Prefabrication is 100% about accountability. Hit your marks, hit your critical path, share with your users the matrix of decision making, be upfront with what they can and can't change. Because if you're going to do prefabrication and you have a chief nursing officer come in when the walls are going up and she wants to make changes, no, we don't allow it. It's not. We've been very transparent and upfront about it, and it's been fantastic. What's next on the slide?
Just that video showing the current plan to bring the building up.
Yeah, so we are honest to goodness, we are flying an airplane and changing the wings as we do it right now. Denton has come in and spun the head off a whole bunch of people. I have no desire to make a project better. I really want to make this industry better and this region better. And it's amazing to watch how excited these teams get when you actually give them the environment, the tools, the mindset, the support, right, from an owner standpoint, to say, anything you want to bring to the table, let's talk about it. Let's find a better way to make the process better. I will share with you very holistically that the aspect of silos have always been the piece that people say silos are the badness. We've always been in silos in our traditional thinking. From an architectural standpoint, I want you to have silos. I want you to have time to really do fantastic design, to really think through it and have that time to do your job. But I want you to be able to have the opportunity to take everything you learned and transfer it over to folks that now really care about what you want to protect and what's important to you. And that has been the real win in building teams. I left the owner side after 28 years and went to the dark side and went to work for Beck because I wanted to help them figure out how to really do collaborative integrated projects. And so I came up with a 14-step process that shows the structure of collaboration that one must have to create the environment that allows teams to engage holistically together to get the goodness that the owners are looking for. And that's based on creating real alignment, real expectation sessions, creating real measures, taking retrospective pauses, and making sure we're learning through the journey. And the teams that know how to do that, boy, it's the opposite. You have to pull them back so they don't burn themselves out, and that's just a blessing. So we are working hard. That is a beautiful billion-dollar project right in front of you with a brand new CR to the left of it, which is another 100,000, and it's going to be all prefabbed. Boy, 60% of it. It's incredible. So I'm very proud of what everybody on this team is doing. That's the main point of what I want to tell everybody on this today, because this team is rocking it. They're doing a great job, and the sky's the limit for what we're going to do next.
Excellent. Thank you, Denton. I think you have an audience of people who wished you were the owner they were working for after that. So Lee, how do you feel about the plan to do a bio break? I really want to make sure that we give adequate time to the Q&A, but I am also sensitive that we have all been here for an hour and a half already. Yeah. 5 minutes?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay.
Maximum 5. Yeah. Yep.
So folks need to stretch, take a quick break. Now is the time to get more questions into the chat. I have pulled the ones that you put in there, but I'm sure there is a lot more that you would like to ask this panel. So please do add any more thoughts to the chat, and we'll start in a couple minutes.
And again, I will put in the link for the CEUs. There it goes one more time.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay.
Panelists, get some water, and we'll be back in a minute.
Don Lee, you on? Man, we could talk for hours.
I know.
And don't you know, we're doing some just really fantastic stuff, and it's really cool to really start showing some of the real metrics and things that we're seeing out of it.
All right, I see. We
We
need,
do have everybody.
we need Chris. Chris, are you back?
Oh, I'm back. Yes, sorry.
All
Great.
right. Then I think we can get started. And Lee, I'm going to start with the question that you thought was so critical to discuss. So there's this perception that here in the Northeast, we're behind in doing as much prefabrication as we could be. And so where it seems that owners are not pushing prefabrication demand the way you are, Denton, why is that? What are the barriers? And what advice do you all have for this design audience in pushing the conversation themselves?
If you don't mind, I'll tee that up real quick, because it's been sort of a transition for me as well. Anytime that you're in a market for 30 years, like I was in Dallas-Fort Worth, and you come to another market, you have to measure your previous norm to the current norm. When I came to Charlotte, I had to make a decision based on what was my tact. Do I actually try to implement everything that's in my heart to my staff and expect them to deliver something that maybe the industry's not supporting them, or did I go to the industry? So this owner, the first year I was here, went to 57 architects, designers, engineers, contractors, and subcontractors' offices and asked for an audience of everybody on their team so I could do a presentation about where the industry was, where it is now, and where it's going. Okay, and so that sort of created this momentum of the region that basically said there is an opportunity to really have an environment that allows us to test the water safely. And so about 6 months ago, I got a note from one of the senior level construction gentlemen at one of the contractors that we're using right now. And it was a really cool note. And that gentleman said, Denton, I'm late in my career, but I'm having more fun than I ever have because I'm getting to do the things I've always wished I could. Okay, but I will tell you that the Charlotte region, based on where I came from, and I brought my right-hand man that I've had for the last 15 years with me, we think Charlotte is 5 to 7 years behind Dallas-Fort Worth. Okay, and you can't force that switch to turn on and just assume that that's going to come up to speed. So it really came down to, once again, the procurement process of picking teams that drove the behavior that teed up the reason why it makes sense. And here's the value proposition to do it. It's all about creating the message and the value proposition to owners to show them it really is real.
Anything to add from anyone in the group? Ryan, any thoughts from you?
Well, I would build on what Denton is saying. I think a big, oh, sorry, I lost video. There we go. A big part of the learning for us is, how to get owners excited about this. And there have even been presentations that I've done with owners where we've talked about the value of prefabrication, but we haven't been in the right key. They often think, oh, that's about means and methods. That's about how you build it. I don't want to deal with that. I've got enough on my plate. That's the builder's problem. But turning that around and talking about the value that it even brings to them. And as Denton said, opening a building earlier is a huge revenue opportunity for them. So turning schedule savings and compression into real revenue numbers, that makes a big difference. Or talking about the way it's going to flex better in the future or better craft and precision. Those are the kinds of things that are going to resonate with an owner. And it took us a while to learn what those were.
Yeah, I would also go back to this post that I've got on my crazy marketing here, this idea of design reuse. And that's where, Denton said a lot in that. I was fortunate to be in one of those 57 presentations. But he said, look, I want to buy 1,000 rooms to go in my next 3 projects. Who's going to help me do that? And if you think about that, it's not just that benefit speed to market of each of those buildings, but it's the benefit throughout the design cycle of all those decisions that have been made and memorialized. So it's something that getting people to be aware of that long-term value proposition.
I think there's some other thing. I agree with everything that everybody said. I want to build on it. So I think the key thing is having that engaged owner, an engaged owner who sees the value and wants to get that outcome. And then it becomes, how do they set expectations back to their team that's been assembled, the professional services team, the contractors, subcontractors, engineers. And then I think it really becomes critical that there's an evaluation metric like Denton was talking about, that A3 or an internal process to look at it. Because if the decision is being made at, say, a project management level as a construction means and methods, they're looking at it in isolation of just that project, just that cost. They don't necessarily care about early occupancy or life cycle savings or any of those things. A more senior person in the organization like Denton or his key people will, but it's just to look at who's making those decisions. Are they empowered, and how are they what criteria are they using? So we're working on a project in Philly right now with a very large health system, and they did exactly that. They built their own financial model, and then they evaluated it with the clinical team, the facilities team, and the financial team, to be able to say any change they made or anything they wanted to do had to be approved by each of those 3 groups to move forward. And they built a really great relationship between the 3 leaders in those departments, and are going to have a really spectacular building in a few years that gets built. And then I think on the trade partner side, and even some of the professional services teams, there's a lack of experience out there. You have to find the right team, and that lack of experience leads to a misunderstanding of risk, and that misunderstanding of risk leads to an improper evaluation back in preliminary design or early SD that can get the whole process off the rails. So I think there needs to be, when we work with Kaiser or some of these other larger health systems, we're frequently hearing, hey, we don't want to be in the education business anymore. You guys need to be in the education business and create a process that's repeatable that can go back out to professional service teams and contractors. And we've been doing that. We're rolling a program out shortly that does just that.
All right. What about scalability? So we heard about a lot of big projects today. And how are you all seeing this proceed on the just huge amount of small projects and renovations that are out there? Any reason?
It's not about prefabrication, it's about mindset, okay? Bathroom pods are a great example. Bathroom pods really make a good reason if they're on the critical path. I've got a 48-bed hospital, Greenfield, going right now, and the bathrooms are not on the critical path. We did not use prefab pods. We built them, but we built them based on the standard, so they were quicker. They didn't have to get reworked and no wasted effort. So even if you don't pre-purchase something and you've got a standard that says this is what we're building, at least you're really efficient in the decision making.
Any other thoughts? Smaller projects?
We're seeing an opportunity with our structural DVC components that smaller projects are actually an earlier win opportunity. That the panelized structural wall systems can come in. Your barrier for design and structural engineering is a little lower. And I think also often on the part of the owner, there's a more willingness to be consistent and build to a standard so that they can replicate these smaller facilities more quickly.
Yeah, I think Charlie, I'll go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think the replication and the standardization is a key component. So, with what we do, we'll align those assemblies, right? The interior construction assemblies with what the customer would normally build. So now we can create these assemblies. They're up in BIM 360 or something like that. They're standardized. We know the dimensions. We know the stuff that goes inside of them, but they can be stretched or skewed as needed. And then we can take those typicals now for construction, download them into the plan, knock it out, create the assemblies, ship them. We just did a 1,500 square foot urgent care in Chicago for a health system, and we did it at a significantly faster and less costly than it would have been to build that space conventionally. And that was an adaptive reuse from retail to outpatient. So I think there's certainly places we can be successful.
I think Charlie said it very well. Charlie made a statement that the mindset has to be, don't tell us what we're going to prefab, tell us why we're not going to. And if you take a project team that's worked on a project that did prefab and they're using workflows, they're going to change their workflows. They're going to change how they deliver work just based on that previous project, and they're going to get the benefit of being on a project that did it, no matter the size.
Absolutely. Ryan, you also talked about how you showed a slide of how the scope of prefab on your jobs tiered over time. So can you talk a little bit about the process of setting that scope and deciding, as Charlie said, everything's in until it's not. How do you go about that?
Well, I mean, that is the breakthrough when it all flips and then you ask why not prefab instead of what we were doing in the past and early on. For us early on, the equation was prefab would make sense for high repetition or high complexity. And there was a pretty low threshold for when that happened. If we were doing 180 beds and they were all exactly the same, then we hit that threshold. But now that the efficiencies are so much higher and it's a much more linear and streamlined manufacturing process, that threshold keeps going down lower and lower, which is why we can be much more aggressive in what we decide to prefabricate now.
Let me add one on here that we haven't talked about. And it's because I work for a large healthcare system and I've always been in healthcare. We get a different opportunity to engage the labor force with prefabrication, with non-technical labor force that has absolutely changed how some of our trade partners are actually building their work and giving other people's an opportunity to get in an industry that might not ever have an opportunity to do that. And it's huge from a community level.
And it's you're speaking to the leanie in me, Denton, right? That is what Respect for People is about, is that engagement of the people closest to the work and pulling people in and creating enthusiasm for the bright future of this industry beyond being a laborer. So I have a question. You all have talked about standardization today, and I think at least something I've bumped up against is this perception that stifles creativity. So can you all share an example of how this way of working and how, Denton, you went from 900 pages of standards, which is not standardization, down to 90 pages of guidelines. So how has this unleashed creativity in each of you on the projects you've been involved in? Can you each share a story?
I can share lots, and honestly, it comes down to my own staff, to tell you the truth. They got so used to only leaning on the standards that they forgot how to think, right? And so now they have the ability, I was talking to Melissa earlier, one of the first things I had to do to 141 FTE facilities department, when we broke down the command and control, went to leadership intent and got rid of the standards, I had to teach them how to phone a friend, to call the industry and say, what is best practice? What are you learning? Where are we going? And they just got way excited because there was more goodness out there than they ever thought there was. They just didn't know it was there. So we're growing our people. We're getting our people to really think in an innovative way. They're learning so much. And honestly, it's IQ versus EQ. It really is. It's the ability to understand, to have real robust conversations, to be able to push back, ask the 5 whys, to be able to raise the bar, move the rock.
Excellent.
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
I think for us, if I could just talk about one exciting creative opportunity, it's thinking about one room, if we're talking about an inpatient environment, one footprint that can work for multiple modes, and not just purpose building it for one mode. Like I really think it's interesting, like the micro apartment, you see like people converting a micro apartment, now it works as a dining room, and then they push a wall and then it works for an office. Like that kind of thinking is so interesting architecturally, and that's exactly what we're doing when we're trying to come up with a design that's optimized both for ICU and med surg and rehab, which is exactly what those 700 rooms that Denton is talking about do. So it's an incredible creative opportunity when you're meeting with 3 different sets of user groups, actually more than that, because even within ICU, you might be talking to neuro and you might be talking to heart, and you're pulling all that information then into a set of plans and then overlaying them to make sure that it meets all of those needs in one footprint, one column grid, one geometry. I think that's really exciting as a designer. It's a super opportunity for creativity.
Absolutely. Anyone else have anything to add? Yeah, Charlie, go.
Yeah, I've been excited and didn't know because he's been in the space. So DPR has, we have 6 net zero facilities around the country. Our Charlotte office is not one, 3 wellness rated, but our Charlotte location is the only location where I push open doors and I walk into a warehouse. And every time I walk in the warehouse, it's a smile on my face because that's where we've done this prefab lab. And to the respect for people question, I've told all the other guys with the fancier offices, like the one thing we have that you don't, because we are a self-performed builder, is that everybody's equal when they pull in the parking lot. From the warehouse to our office, no one feels funny being there, what they're wearing. It's been this tremendous opportunity for us to let the guys that do the work every day come in and explain to architects, designers, and even some of our good PMs and supers, hey, we need to change this, or this is not going to work. And we're all right there looking at it with that rapid prototyping. So that's, I think that creativity fueled by diversity, we've really seen that take place.
And I think the way that we approach it at DIRTT is, you all may not know this, but our roots go back to Evans Consols, who made command control units for NASA. And you can never take those down, right? They always have to be up and running 24/7, no matter what change happens. And the concept was, how do you take that design for disassembly and build a building that way when it started out? So because it's different layers, right? We don't design anything. We take the design from the architect and just make it into a prefab approach. But that's why the framing is separate from all those utilities, and the finishes are separate from those as well. The finishes attach proud to the frame. So the framing is structure, but the finishes are connected to it, but independent in terms of dimension and materiality. So you have the ability to have an interior structure to meet a variety of needs and rapidly change to go up and down in acuity, but the finish or the cladding that goes on it is completely separate in form and finish based on the design of the architect. And the way that those things work together enables us to meet almost any design intent and create an incredible amount of flexibility.
Fantastic. Keith, anything you want to tack on?
No, it's in the same vein as what everyone's been talking about. It's amazing how, and I like what Denton said several times. It's amazing how if you can get in the door and put a team together and in a room, and everybody's equal when they get in that room. So everything that they show up on the board means just as important as the next guy. And there's no boss, there's no anything. And you run your DFAM or DFMA, whatever you want to call it, and you throw everything up there, and then you start pulling things out that hey, that might work. And you're not necessarily saying you're going to prefab anything, but the mindset is that how can we improve the schedule? How can we improve the quality? And what can we do to change what we're doing? Because everybody's got the labor stress or ex-COVID time, but everybody had to work with the labor issues, whether you built it on site or in a factory, and so you start finding those wins, and people get excited about that, and they say, you know what, that really might work. We could build those somewhere else and bring them in, because then I don't have to do this out here. I can be doing something else at the same time, and that helps my schedule, that helps my cost, it does everything. So that's what's exciting about it. And putting those teams together is probably harder than I'm making it sound, but once you start to do that and you get good representation from the owner down to the multi-trades to the prefabricators and that, it's a pretty exciting exercise.
Let me take a real quick second and show you the importance of what it takes from the team environment. People are very predictable. Projects are easy, people are hard, okay? So these teams take structure, they take accountability, they take the authority matrix. And so each of these teams needs an outline of expectation of what the team is going to try to achieve. They need measures of accountability, and they need retrospectives. If you have a charter and a measure of accountability and you put it in front of a very high active, type A, really progressive team, and you ask everybody in that room, what's going well and what's not, they're not going to say anything. They're so proud. They're so driven to be proud, and they're not going to make their peers look bad, and you're not going to get the real stuff that you need. I learned a long time ago that if I'll put that charter up on the wall and I get that entire team in a room to have a retrospective, and I don't allow them to talk because they're not going to anyway, and I give them red, green, and yellow dots, and everybody has to go up to that wall of the charter and put green on what's going well, yellow on what's not, but we should focus, and red's the old craps, then all of a sudden we have something to talk about. Make the process better.
And let me just say as well, I know you and I would agree with the sentiment. Yeah, you want an owner who thinks like Denton technically in the Northeast, but what he's done for the team environment is critical. And I observe that teams, when they're not functioning and they're not high performing, they will devolve back to what they've done before, which is why we don't advance. And Denton, you didn't finish it, so I will. So Denton talked to us about CFM, which is cold, frosty mug. And that is that, getting together in a shared neutral space, what they call it, fifth places or whatever. So when we did a pursuit video to fly through, we actually had clocks on the wall where 5 o'clock, 5 was off and CFM was on. So it's that kind of fun and that kind of engagement that gets you through these, because it's hard work, getting through that.
It's very hard.
Get those O3, but if the team's built for it, you'll get the work done.
Yeah. Good point, Charlie.
So I heard a lot of values to working this way from you all today. We heard about safety, quality, productivity. I heard a ton about schedule certainty and how that influences earlier occupancy, revenue delivery. Charlie, I heard from you about adapting to the worker in that respect for people element, which is so wonderful. Huge shifts in team behavior. So if those are the benefits now, when we're so early in this as an industry, how do you see it shifting over time? As we get better at this, what additional value are we going to create as we mature as an industry? This is your question, Charlie. You got to really hit it.
All right. I'll take the first stab here. And I've been informed and learned a lot from the CURT organization, Construction Users Roundtable. If you've got an owner and you'd like for them to rub shoulders with the right people and you can't get them down to see Denton and Charlotte, CURT is a great place to go. They've put out with their offsite construction committee things like setting targets. We have some pharma owners where 50% is the contract requirement and 80% is the goal. And they're not kidding. And like Denton, they'll put their money there because they need that building faster. So I think 10 years from now, it's shortening that design window with this idea of design reuse. It's getting more mature in this understanding of capital, because if you think about the capital, and this is why I start with CURT, they estimate that from the owner's perspective, 41% of the waste in construction is transactional waste. Getting to a better supply chain, being able to do operations science, and understanding it's opening that facility faster, and then it's freeing that capital up to do the next project. If we look at that waste, if you do the math from where McKinsey was in 2017, we're now north of $2 trillion a year in waste. You put that kind of capital to work, taking care of people, getting the next drug out, building the next electric vehicle, we have this tremendous opportunity. So I think 10 years out, that's going to be that. It's that shortening and creating certainty in capital delivery and enabling this economic engine to work for us.
I think one of the things back in Texas that really drove the raising the bar faster that I'd love to see here and probably need to see it up in the Northeast is the Construction Owners of America Assembly. Back in Texas, the Construction Owners of America met monthly, and we talked about whose project was doing, what they were learning, where were they raising the bar, and we shared with each other. I don't feel that amount of sharing in this region for some reason, and I'm pushing hard to get that to start happening.
Really good point. Ryan?
Yeah.
Oh, Chris, you want to go?
No, Ryan can go.
I was just going to come at the same question, but from a different angle, and just think about where healthcare is going. You see an arc with that where it's moving away from this very centralized, and concentrated hospital environment, and care is being then delivered in a network and stretching out all the way into people's homes now with telehealth and almost every space in between. So we can see a lot of work that's been in the very complicated realm of the hospital in terms of prefab, but then how prefab can serve health and healthcare, but not just in an inpatient environment, not just in a hospital setting, but then moving into clinics and even booths or things that could be about telehealth that are deployed in the community, and then are creating a much more ubiquitous network of care. And prefabrication could be terrific for that, because then it's meeting people where they are in their neighborhoods and not forcing them to come into the space of the hospital. So I think that there are lots of opportunities just in terms of that healthcare arc.
Excellent.
So that kind of segues into what I was going to talk about it, in terms of moving out. We already have created both testing and treatment kiosks and booths that are interior or indoor or outdoor prefab that can be delivered, dropped in place, and are doing quite a bit of them right now. As cold weather starting to approach, same thing with telehealth pods and booths. But I think that there's going to be an increasing use of AI throughout all of our industries as we start to look at offsite or prefab manufacturing. We're definitely starting to trend more in that direction. So I think there's going to be a rise of that, and it's going to drive some of those efficiencies. I think there may start to be some standardized processes of prefab and how it integrates in with overall projects from a documentation and standpoint, and from how that's better understood by everyone. And I think that there's going to start to be, and Ryan can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's going to start to be a movement in professional services teams that they're going to have to maybe start to reimagine a little bit of their role, because if you're using more and more prefab, and that prefab may be combinations of different types of prefab brought together on the project to meet the goals of the owner, I think that the professional services teams and the architects and engineers are going to have to start thinking about how do we start to manage these different types of prefab assemblies, put them together into one plan to reach this goal for the owner. And I think there's going to be some movement in that direction as well.
I love that point, moving from role as designer to a systems integrator, someone who understands the landscape of all those components and then is figuring out synergies between them and how to bring together a lot of pre-manufactured and pre-thought intelligence into a really integrated system.
So I'm a proponent of getting away from project managers, getting into IPLs, which are integrated project leaders. Okay, somebody holistically that understands how to be that conductor, to assemble all those, to push the collaboration that's necessary to get the decisions made and get out of the traditional behavior.
So this is one that just
a whole
occurred
new
to me.
industry.
And I've got to think on it a little more, but I think we have a chance 10 years from now that maybe we'll trust each other. Owner and GC and trade partner. Like we'll have the data and we'll have transparency. Like what would that world be like, guys?
All right, Charlie. Well, you've heard me tell the difference between trust and vulnerable trust, right? Trust is that I know you'll do your job and I'll do mine, but vulnerable trust is I know you have my back and I have yours. This takes vulnerable trust.
Right.
Absolutely. So we have just 2 minutes left. Yes, Lee? Did I lose Lee? I don't want to run.
I'm here.
You're
Yep.
okay.
I mean, the Zoom will not cut us off. I believe we could keep going, but we need to respect our panelists' lives.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
maybe I would just ask you all, we sort of sidestepped our way there at the end. One word to describe how you actually feel about what you're doing now and the future of this industry with prefabrication and the changes we're taking on right now. One word.
I would say energized for me.
Keith?
Yeah, I don't know if I have one word, but 2 words: new blood coming out of the universities. There's several universities across the country that are educating their architects and engineers on prefabrication and the benefits of modular construction. And it's a lot easier to get a seat at the table now if you're a modular or a prefabricator. And so, I'm just excited to get the new blood and the new thinking out there.
Fantastic. Charlie?
I'll pull a word that we leaned in on in aligning our values with Atrium, and that's hope.
Ryan?
Blue sky. compound word. We'll push that together and just say just
All
a lot of wide open opportunity. And I think the best is yet to come. We've really only scratched the surface.
Fantastic. Denton?
Yeah, mine is going to be always about the teams and how proud I am of their willingness.
Excellent. Well,
Great, great.
thank you all. I think
Yes.
We could have a chat full of words from those remaining, and I would love to see those words and how this panel impacted you. There's some great comments out there already. And Lee, do we have any administrative wrap up that I'm mucking up right now?
Nope, except that, you know, as we were planning this, we felt like there was way more than we could fit in even the 2 hours that we've done. And we're thinking about a follow-up in the spring. So if people have ideas or other people they want to recommend or questions or focuses for a follow-up sequel, let us know. And we'll see if we can pull that together.
So maybe between now and then, I'll finish a white paper that I'm working on that y'all all laugh about. If architects and owners have to bid and apply for jobs, why don't owners?
Yeah,
I like that.
we like that.
Yeah.
I would like to hear from the guys who are building the modular Marriott in Europe and shipping it to New York City. I do see New York City as being an outlier. There are some things that have happened since the 60s in New York that are phenomenal with prefab. And that would be a story I'd love to hear.
Great. Okay.
All right.
Well,
Thank you,
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
We really appreciate your time. We appreciate everyone who came and listened and sent questions. And thank you, Melissa, for keeping us all in line.
Oh, please. It was easy with this group. So thank you.
Take care,
did
everybody.
you-
All right,
Sarah,
thank you.
did you have anything?
Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Good.
Bye-bye.
Good night,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, wait. I shouldn't leave the meeting because I'll turn it off. I just realized. Sorry.
Yeah, when I got bumped off, I became no longer a host. I couldn't do anything.
It looks like most
That's okay.
people are making their way out, except Tim.
Tim's
I
hanging
wanted to
around.
say that was just a tremendous event. I meant what I said. That was a high caliber national type event that just happened. And it was put on by the BSA, you know, the local committee from the Boston Society of Architects. And great job, really.
Thank you, Tim.
Lee
Thank
and
you
the
for
crew
your help
putting it together.
and your inspiration.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a helper in the chat section too, Tim. It was a lot to keep track of. So
I saw a couple of questions that would have been good to ask. Yeah, so good.
Yeah, the whole union thing. Interesting. Yeah.
I did. I wanted to go there because I saw that surface, but then I actually did think, Tim, you handled it pretty well. Yep, it's
It's doing okay, at least at the dirt level. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Stephanie O'Brien from Consigli stepped right up and said, yeah, we're using it, no problem.
Yeah.
You know, and they're one of the strongest union contractors in town. So it really is, it's a non-issue, but it's an issue to people that are so far from the knowledge or understanding. That's a really easy question. But if you have no idea and no experience, it's a question. It's a real question.
Absolutely.
Good. So I'm saving the chat just so we have it documented. I just found a button that said I could do that.
Oh, good. And I just realized I'm still recording, so I'm going to end the recording,
I'll
although
see
we
you
can
guys.
always turn
Thank
it
you,
off.
There's a debrief.
All right. Take care.